The Bricks and Minifig story never ends, and today it gets even spicier. Because not only is Bricks and Minifig's entire lawsuit in trouble, but McNabb is also telling franchisees that they should get guns to protect themselves from customers, maybe speaking about Reckless Ben. As we dive into this story, I'm having a nice midday iced coffee. Sorry that we're late with this video, but I had zero internet connection all morning. But we're at it, we're about to get into it, so let's take a look.
A federal judge gave Reckless Ben's lawyers a deadline to answer one specific question, or the entire case would get sent back to Utah State Court. And they just filed their answer 4 days early.
Oh boy.
So before we get into this, I want to credit the channel America's Attorney for breaking this filing down and helping me understand it. If you want to watch his video, I'll have it linked in the description. But with that being said, let's get into why Bricks and Minifig's trajectory in this case is definitely looking more downward than it was a few days ago, and they are definitely a lot closer to losing this lawsuit than they are winning. And
now I have to say, I don't know about you, but I was always under the impression that Bricks and Minifigs was going to struggle with their case here as it was getting weaker and weaker as the days go by. Today is just another day of more weakness presenting.
My opinion. So first of all, let me actually talk about what this question even was that Reckless Ben's lawyers had to answer and all of that. So Ben's lawyers moved this whole case out of Utah State Court and into federal court using diversity jurisdiction. And the problem with that is that their original paperwork just said that Reckless Ben LLC was a California company, which isn't quite enough legally. For an LLC, a judge usually, I think, needs to know every single member of that LLC and where each one actually lives. So Judge David Barlow gave them until today, July 21st, to fill in that information, or they would risk the case getting kicked back to state court.
Now, and the reason for that is LLCs are often created in different states from where you reside, mostly for tax purposes.
And like I said, Reckless Ben's lawyers responded 4 days before the deadline, and here is what the filing actually says. A direct quote says, quote, "The sole member of Reckless Ben's LLC was Benjamin Schneider, an individual. There are no other members of Reckless Ben LLC." So that is one person and one owner. There's no like hidden second member to trace through. There's no employees or secret people like involved with this LLC they need to track down and look where they're located at. No, it's just Ben, so it's nice, easy, simple. They said that Ben was domiciled in California when the lawsuit was filed and when this disclosure was submitted. And that's that. That's answering the judge's question perfectly. It's simple. There's really no issue here. So the chances the judge likes this and, keep this case in federal court is pretty dang high. America's Attorney, I think he says there's like a 99.999% chance that this stays in federal court now because Reckless Ben's lawyers did exactly what the judge asked of them. And this is really bad news for Bricks and Minifigs because staying in federal court, it might be a death sentence for them. Long term for this case, I mean, their entire lawsuit strategy, it started in the Utah State Court, where Bricks and Minifigs is, of course, headquartered, where their attorneys are based, and where the original emergency restraining order was granted ex parte, without Ben even being there. So federal court, they don't really carry the same local home field dynamic. And you all have your theories about this. We all have our own opinions about Judge Tony Graff and everything that was going on over in Utah.
I mean, it's basically the boys club in Utah. Everyone there is of the same beliefs, we'll say, to keep everything politically correct. But the law enforcement, the Bricks and Minifigs, and the entire court system are all in the same club, looking out for each other, watching each other's backs and making sure that things go in their favor, not in Reckless Ben or anyone else that was involved.
I don't need to go over that, but you guys can have your own theories and assumptions and everything involving that. But where judges are federally appointed in this federal court and they're not part of the local Utah court system, usually the case I think is looked at, with less bias. The federal procedure rules tend to be applied more strictly across the board, and it doesn't really matter who you are. It's just bang, like little to no bias happening in this case. And for a company, of course, hoping that a hometown court might move faster or lean favorably on their questions, losing that entirely changes the pressure dynamic here. And it also means that Bricks Minifigs now has to fight this case in front of a judge with zero prior relationship to their legal team or the original temporary restraining order decision. They're starting fresh on rules that don't favor either side by default. There's also a detail I think most people miss with this. Buried at the bottom of this filing is something I think is worth paying attention to. It says that Brian Mansell has completely separate lawyers out of Portland, Oregon. That's different from Ben's legal team. It says Ben, his LLC, and Victor are represented by Spencer Fain. So usually, this is interesting because co-defendants don't usually pay for like two separate law firms unless there's a chance their interests won't stay perfectly aligned going forward. So basically, Ben and Victor want different things from this case than Brian Mansell will maybe want, like different specific things. Brian is probably asking for specific compensation or whatever it may be in this case. Whatever he may want is going to be different from Ben because obviously Ben is the YouTuber that was making the documentaries and Brian had his collections stolen out from under him. So there's probably going to be some conflicting, or maybe not conflicting interests, but just different interests here in this case.
I mean, that's two completely separate cases, right? Reckless Ben is not being sued for the same thing that that the collector is suing for. It's just two separate cases that all just happen to be intertwined into one.
And here is what might be coming next. Now, to be clear, nothing has been filed yet on this front. Okay. This is America's attorney's own forecast, and I really like what he said in the video, and even though I have no experience legally, I pretty much agree. So, August 3rd is the real deadline to watch moving forward. That is when the defendants have to respond to Bricks Minifigs' full complaint. So, by August 3rd, we're going to be seeing something happen, and America's attorney thinks that Ben's team could file a motion to dismiss rather than a standard answer. And his reasoning is that Bricks Minifigs' RICO complaint describes an entire enterprise that Ben, his associates, and 15 unnamed Doe defendants all allegedly conspired together in. And courts sometimes call vague group accusations without specifics on who did what shotgun pleading, and that's exactly the kind of complaint a motion to dismiss is designed to attack. Of course, we'll know for certain what actually gets filed once August 3rd arrives, and I'll definitely keep you all updated, but in my opinion, this is a pretty big hit to Bricks Minifigs. It was already a big hit once this case moved to federal court, and then this case could have been moved to Utah State Court again, but now it probably will stay in federal court, and on top of that, Reckless Ben's legal team could very well file a motion to dismiss this whole freaking case because the RICO charges are kind of insane when you look at how Bricks Minifigs accused Reckless Ben and everyone in this lawsuit.
My opinion is that this staying in federal court is probably the biggest deal because you're getting yourself a fair case. There's not going to be any buddy stuff going on where they're actually looking out for one another. This is going to be something that can be a more fair case if it goes through. That's the biggest thing out of this so far. But McNaff talking about people getting protection from probably Reckless Ben. Let's take a look at some of that.
In your opinion, would you go get a shotgun and bring it in the store?
So he can get the okay from the police officer. Yeah. So he's like, hey, the officer said I can, insinuating that he can kill you.
Well, the police officers were that told me to do this. Like, I was within my rights. He was trying to kill me, and I'm just defending myself.
Today, some new body cam footage from Bricks Minifigs, Eamon McNaff in particular, just surfaced. Reckless Ben posted a video to his channel going over all of it, and it shows what happened in the hours right after Ben got out of jail the first time. And one specific exchange in this footage is genuinely alarming, and it is insane. Like, if you thought Eamon McNaff was insane and doing some crazy stuff before this, after this, you're going to be like, what the heck? Like, you're just going to be so mind boggled. I definitely was when I was watching this.
So I have to say, Reckless Ben, maybe he's a nuisance. Maybe he's sticking his nose in areas that people feel he shouldn't be, but to be scared of him or to feel like you need protection for your staff and store because of Reckless Ben, I think is a little bit absurd.
This footage picks up right after Ben was released on bond following his first arrest, which happened while he was attempting to serve the court papers to Joshua Johnson. And according to Ben, almost immediately after his release, Ammon began contacting the police, upset that Ben had been let out at all, which on its own, it's like, what is wrong with you? Anyway, moving on, the footage shows an officer explaining that keeping someone held before trial is a decision made by a judge. It's not something that the police necessarily control, the local police. So it's like, bro, why are you even calling me about this? Like, Ammon is just crying to the police because, you know, I guess he's used to doing that. But the officer tells him, no, this is actually a judicial decision, not my decision. Moving on in the footage, Ammon expresses some serious frustration that Ben was released at all, describing him as a threat to staff safety, saying that Ben was threatening to, you know, do some crazy stuff to the Bricks Minifigs employees and everyone involved, and he asks the officer for guidance on how to prevent further contact and references wanting additional charges to keep Ben from returning. So basically, Ammon wants Ben completely locked up until his court date. And later in the footage, Ammon directly asks the officer whether it would be a good idea to have a shotgun at the store for staff protection. And the officer's response, as captured on the recording, was that he personally encourages people who are legally able to carry a firearm to do so. I mean, that's a standard response from a cop. I wouldn't expect anything else. But
that being said, though, you don't need, at least where I am, you don't need a license or a permit to carry a shotgun. You could have a shotgun in your home. You could have a shotgun at your work. You could have a shotgun. You can't carry it around on the streets, but you don't need a carry permit like you would where I am, a pistol permit or something like that, like a permit to carry. So basically that police officer was saying, yes, you should have a shotgun to protect yourself at your store, which could have caused some crazy drama.
The fact that Ammon said that is insane. Like, that is on camera between a business owner and a police officer. Ammon asking if he should have a shotgun at the store specifically because of Ben.
Now, do you think that it was deserved? Do you think that, now I'm all for protecting yourself, I'm all for protecting your family, and I'm all for protecting your property. But in the terms of how this case went down, do you think that it would be necessary to bring it up that you need to ask a police officer if you're basically allowed to protect yourself? That's what I take from this, that he was kind of asking for permission to protect himself, which if Reckless Ben would have then walked in the store again, he could have found himself in a lot of trouble and, more importantly, in a lot of danger. This is one that I'd like to hear your thoughts on, and I know a lot of people have different feelings on guns and people owning guns and protecting their own space. So sound off down below. Let me know your thoughts on the topic. And if you want to dive deeper into the entire Reckless Ben story, we have literally 20 plus videos over in this playlist. I'll see you guys over there.